Welcome to Scott and Matt and Scott Talk Barbra. How you doing, Matt?
I am Matt. Yes, hi.
Yes.
How are
How are
you?
you? I'm doing great. It's good to be back. It's fun that we worked for a solid couple years on our Barbra book, and what do? They released two albums to make our book outdated.
Jay warned us that something was coming that would outdate the book, but it's okay. And now Barbara has her own book coming out, so it's just it's an amazing time to be a Barbra Streisand fan.
Yes, and this episode we're going to talk about Evergreens and Yentl, and Jay was the executive producer on both, and we're gonna find out how they did this and all that. So let's welcome Jay to the show.
And we're back with Jay Landers, who on a previous episode said we'd have to do some updating to the music book because Barbara has more releases coming out. And here we are today talking about two new releases that just came out last weekend, the 27th of October, which would
Correct.
have been last weekend. Yeah. And of course, Jay put these together. We're talking today about the 40th Anniversary Deluxe Edition of Yentl, the soundtrack with a second disc of, there it is, a second disc of some rare and unreleased tracks. And we're also talking about Evergreens, which is a collection of previously released Streisand tracks, but kind of curated and put in an interesting listening order by Jay. Did Barbara, Jay, did Barbara
I'm on
contribute?
The Price is Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
I mean, your next job can be Vanna White, maybe.
Right.
All right. Jay, did Barbara contribute to choosing all of those songs on Evergreens and the order that they go in and everything?
She did. These were the concept of this album was to take a little bit of a deeper dive into her illustrious catalog and intentionally not include any of her greatest hits and very signature songs that have been on other compilations. This was really to encourage fans, old fans and new fans, to listen to the songs that sometimes get overlooked, but that she feels strongly about. And I will say that in my so-called career, most of the artists that I have worked with, including Barbra, always feel that there's songs that didn't get onto the radio that should have gotten onto, maybe not should have gotten onto the radio, but should have been listened to, and just sort of get lost in the they sort of get lost. How about that? I just
right.
fancier way of saying it. That's it.
Here's Target Pink Vinyl.
These really are, oh, that's nice. So these really are some of her favorite songs. And the process that we went through is I went to this site that I discovered called Barbra Archives. And
I've heard of that.
It's very handy. And I simply printed out the lineup of each song, of each album. So I went, tapped on each album and then crossed out the songs from each album that were on other compilations. So there was no People, there was no there was no Don't Rain on My Parade, there was no The Way We Were. I crossed all the big titles out so that we could examine the deeper cuts. And then she looked at that list and she goes, oh, I always liked that song Tomorrow from Annie. I always liked that song. And she's not really that aware of what songs were singles or weren't singles. So she'd sometimes say, was that a hit? Or, she just doesn't pay that much attention to what songs were hits or not.
So when you're going through this list of songs, I imagine there was probably a back and forth. I mean, did you have songs that you really pitched, or you
I
just let
didn't,
Barbara pick
I
everything?
really didn't. I didn't pitch songs. I really, as I said, went to Matt's website, printed out all the repertoire of each album, the track listings for each one, crossed out the greatest hits from each one. And then she looked at it and I just wanted her visceral reaction. And I said, this is an important point. I said, pick 2 songs from each album. So she really had to go through the weeding process of seeing which ones, kind of bubbled up to the top. And then we looked at it and we I wonder if I was able to get how many songs are on this?
I think it's about
Like
30.
22, I think.
Barbara's favorite number is 24. So I
Right.
try to get 24 songs on these
Oh,
double.
it's 22.
22, yeah. And the length of some of them prohibited me from adding 2 more songs. So it would have been 24 if I could have, but
Totally.
we only made it to 22. And then so that's how that was the process.
Well, I was very excited because you have one of my all-time favorite Barbra songs, which is Two People. And Barbra wrote the music to that. And this is a song that fits this album perfectly because I feel like nobody knows it. It kind of, slipped away.
Yeah.
Do you remember Barbra talking about it? And is she like, hey, I wrote the music for that? Or does she kind of forget that because it was like 35 years ago?
Oh, she doesn't forget the songs that she's written. To further the process, to give you an insight into the further process, once she had identified her favorite two lost gems, 2 hidden gems on each LP, then we actually listened to these songs, to the songs that she had picked. We actually sat down and listened to them. And then she'd go, oh, I don't like the arrangement as well. Okay, we'll move on to, and so she'd go to the other song. So there was a bit of a winnowing process through the whole thing. But my intention really was inspired by an album that came out, I don't know when, maybe in the early 1960s, that was called Sinatra's Sinatra. And the concept of that album was that Frank picked his favorite songs from his catalog, and these were his favorite songs. And so
I've never heard of that album.
Yeah, it's called Sinatra on Capitol Records.
Huh.
And I always liked that idea of the artist actually being involved in the song selection as opposed to a anonymous record company person kind of just throwing it together. So that was the process, and she was very much involved in it. And then I was looking for a title because the purpose of making the record was to encourage, first of all, was to celebrate the fact that she is the longest standing artist on Columbia Records who has continually been on the label. So she signed there in, Matt, you would know this, I think 1962, maybe?
That's right. Yep.
And has remained on the label ever since. There was a couple of projects, Funny Girl and Funny Lady, I think. Capitol Records partially financed the Broadway show Funny Girl, and in doing so, they got the rights to put out that record. And Funny Lady was produced by Columbia Pictures, I think.
Yeah.
Who at the time had a label. So those 2 albums were not on Columbia, but her entire studio collection is on Columbia. And there have been many, legendary artists on Columbia, like Tony Bennett, Johnny Mathis, Miles Davis, Billie Holiday, but all of those artists left for periods of time. So Barbra is the longest continual artist on Columbia Records. And because of that, I thought it would be nice to put a record together called, that had the subtitle, A Celebration of 66 Decades on Columbia Records.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was speaking to our friend Richard J. Alexander, who I often go to for ideas. And I said, I'm really kind of stuck for a title for this album, because it's too long-winded to say A Celebration of 6. And he said, well, he says, she's ageless and evergreen. That's the message of this album. And so then I modified that to Evergreens, and hence a title was born. And then
it's a good title.
That gave me the excuse to create one new song, which I put quotation marks around, which is we took the vocals from the hit single Evergreen, which of course had been on other compilations, and put a new backing track to that. So that's the one new song. And then, by the way, just for full disclosure, full disclaimer, I guess I erroneously wrote that I believe had not been released before, but I was wrong, because evidently it had come out on some European B-side or something.
I think it was on Hurricane Relief CD too.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, nobody knows it. I just learned about it recently. I'm like,
yeah, I saw
what?
something online where somebody said it has been released, and I wasn't aware of it. So that's why that little mistake popped up.
Oh,
but I think generally most people don't know it.
Yeah, it's true. Or have it, because it was just, released on a CD that you had to buy in the 90s.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the genesis of the record. And I must say,
Matt, will you hold up the back cover picture, because it'll blur on mine? Tell me about this back cover picture. I think it's the best back cover she's ever done. Where is that picture from, and how did you guys get that?
Once again, Richard J. I asked him if he had any favorite photos, if he knew of any favorite photos that had not been widely disseminated. And he suggested this as the front cover. And I showed it to Barbra, and Barbra really liked the photo, but she had the cover where she's wearing the pink sweater. And that's more contemporary. But that, I believe, was taken. Matt, you might know this, but I think that
I know. Yeah,
you do.
International Hotel.
When they were going to film it for the Ed Sullivan Show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. It was used in publicity for her appearance on Ed Sullivan, which was taped at the International Hotel in Vegas.
Right.
And of course, there's a whole TV special that has never been released that was recorded there. But that's from that performance. Yeah.
Yeah. So very striking photo, and captures her in a really great era of her career, and I think it's quite striking. I'm really pleased with it. And she, Barbra works as hard on the record covers as she does on the recording, so she selected those two, and I'm really very pleased with it.
Now, did you guys do any technical work on any of these tracks? Like, were they remastered or? Yeah, okay, so they're all just original recordings. Yeah, Joachim van der Saag was not involved here.
He was not involved in this particular one. He was very involved in the Yentl recordings, but not in this Evergreens package. If I had endless budgets, I would, happily go in and remaster and all of the things that people do to sonically upgrade. But being that but we did master the record, so I guess you might say it's been remastered, because we had to take all the tracks and master them. And I think one of the things that I'm kind of pleased with is how well these songs sort of naturally flow together.
Matt, as our resident Barbra expert, what song surprises you? What's the truest gem, maybe the deepest cut, or what really stood out to you when you saw this list that you were like, whoa, I can't believe that Barbra picked that one?
I'm going to go with two. I was very pleased that I Don't Know Where I Stand, the Joni Mitchell song, was included, which I just think she's just so lovely on that song. And also Answer Me, which is, you know, it was on, I think, Superman.
Yes.
That's right.
Rupert Holmes.
Yeah, but it's like such a weird art song that's just so beautiful, and it has these beautiful strings. Da, 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 da. I mean, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful song. So those really, I was like, yeah, yay.
I think Answer Me was an outtake from A Star Is Born, if I'm not
Yeah, I
mistaken.
think so. Yeah.
That they later revisit, that she didn't put it in the movie, but revisited it for Superman.
Yeah.
And she pointed out to me, she said, it has the same, and I use this word advisedly, the same lyrical trick that By the Way, the song By the Way has, where the title is used in multiple ways.
And they're both wonderful, wonderful songs. I would think for you, Jay, because I thought of you immediately when I saw this, that your favorite would be Some Enchanted Evening, because you had such a part in bringing that song to life. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is there a track on here that really makes you happy? And did I guess correctly?
Well, I do love her version of Some Enchanted Evening, and it's a little bit of a pride. What is the word? My wife always says, take a pride moment. It's a little bit of a pride moment because when I suggested the song, she first looked at me a little bit askance and said, oh, everybody's done that. It's kind of a tired warhorse kind of song. And then just as good fortune and timing would have it, the genius arranger, Johnny Mandel, happened to be sitting within earshot of our conversation, and he said, I've got a great idea to try it. And Barbra said, well, then try it. And he came back, a week later or so, and he presented this arrangement that she suddenly fell in love with the song. And not only was it just something she recorded, it became the opening track of Back to Broadway. So it was a little bit of a lesson to me that, if you feel something, that if you think you have a good idea, say it.
Right. And I love it so much. And just like you, I remember seeing the list of songs. It was listed like 1 week before it came out, and I was like, Some Enchanted Evening.
Yeah.
I was not, that's not putting it together as an opening song. But then, like, you hear it, and it wasn't what you heard in South Pacific at all.
Right.
So,
well,
it was Barbra.
That was really a collaboration between Johnny Mandel, who was a brilliant guy, who wrote the Shadow of Your Smile, by the way, and the theme song to MASH. Which, as Johnny Mandel's credits are extraordinary. And he said, he worked with Sinatra, Tony Bennett, wrote Shadow of Your Smile, just a brilliant, brilliant guy. And he said, but I bought my house in Malibu with the royalties from Suicide is Painless, from the theme song to MASH. So that was...
I remember when I found out that song had lyrics, and that it was Suicide is Painless, and I was like, oh my. And then I discovered that it was in a Robert Altman film that had Elliot Gould in it. I mean, I didn't know anything about that. That's so interesting.
You know who wrote the lyric? We're digressing, and you could probably edit this out. But
it's okay.
But the lyrics to Suicide Are Painless, you know who wrote them?
No.
Robert Altman's son.
Oh, interesting.
Not a famous songwriter, but his dad happened to like what he wrote.
Wow, I did not know that. That's so interesting.
anyway, so that was so Some Enchanted Evening. I do really like that song. And gosh, I must say I like all the songs on this record. I really do. I've always liked Letters That Cross in the Mail,
Mhm.
from Lazy Afternoon. I've always loved her. I think her version of Isn't It a Pity is just sublime.
Yeah.
And I don't know, every one of these songs touches me in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean it's perfect. So we'll move on to Yentl, which is her other release. But before, we're going to do a quick commercial about Matt's book. He wrote a book called Barbra Streisand, the Music, and I just looked on Amazon, and Barbara has a book coming out on Tuesday called My Name is Barbra. Make sure you get that. When you go on Amazon, the #1 suggested book is Matt's book. So you look at Barbara and it says, what should you get? Is Matt's book, and it's number 42 on the charts this week. So I think Barbara's helping your book. I don't know if you know that, Matt, but the book's number 42 and it came out like what, 6 months ago? So that's incredible. I mean, Barbara's #1, but we're not competing with Barbara. But you're number.
I have to say that yesterday they released 5 minutes of Barbara reading her audiobook. And I cannot wait to hear this 48-hour-long recording of Barbara reading her book. I'm on pins and needles.
Does the on the audio book, I don't know if it's been advertised yet, but we spent a considerable amount of time clearing I think it was about 60 songs. That
it mentions their songs, but I didn't know. Wow, that's a lot.
I think it's somewhere between 40 and 60 songs. I think it's closer to 60, where she explains, why she recorded a particular song, or she cites a particular lyric from a song, and then you hear that song.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you hear an excerpt of that song.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that it makes I have already gone through the fully immersive 40. Is it 48 hours? 49 hours?
It's like 48 hours. Yeah,
yeah. I've gone. I've listened to it, and it's another way of experiencing the book.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
What are the legal rights for Barbara to use her own music? Like, I mean, it's her singing, and you still have to get the rights to put them in?
Well, you have to, not to get too technical, but when you're licensing music for a movie, TV show, TV commercial, or book on tape, as they used to call them, audiobook, there are 2 rights holders for every song that you hear on the radio or hear on your Spotify or wherever you hear it. One is who owns the master. That's the actual physical recording. And then who owns the song publishing rights. So you have to clear with the record label. In Barbara's case, that's pretty simple because all of her songs are on one label, Columbia Records. And then but most of her, the great majority of her songs were written by other writers, and they all have, very complicated publishing associations.
And we don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but like Taylor Swift fans are experiencing this right now, where Taylor's re-recording, like maybe she doesn't own the masters, but she owns the song publishing, something like that. Anyway, I mean, it's a curious, interesting.
Thing was interesting. Taylor did not own her own masters, and then she felt that she should have had the right to buy them when they were for sale. And then she somehow was not part of that deal. And so she decided to re-record all of her old records and, update them. And it's been a phenomenal success for her. But Barbara's case is not analogous to that. It's really that the records are controlled by Columbia Records and Sony Music, and the publishing is controlled by whoever the publishing companies are for the respective writers. So whenever if you want to put, Evergreen on a audio book or license it to a movie or wherever, You have to deal with Sony Music. You have to deal with Warner Brothers Pictures, Warner Brothers Music Publishing Company, which is now owned by Universal Music Company. It's quite a labyrinth of permissions that you need.
So I know that with the Beatles, if you want to use a Beatles song, you got to get every Beatle to sign off. If some director wanted to use Don't Rain on My Parade, maybe that's not a good example. Let's say The Way We Were. Does it have to go all the way to Barbra? Does Barbra have to give that approval?
She does. In her long-standing relationship with Columbia Records, if somebody, I mean, it happens almost every week. Somebody reaches out and says, we'd like to license this song for this movie or TV show or whatever. And then that goes to Barbra and me and her manager, Marty. And we evaluate whether that's a good look for the song.
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is an example of a show on TV that used several of Barbra's songs.
Yeah.
Licensed several of Barbra's songs.
That's correct. That's correct.
And to me, that's how an artist keeps relevant, you know, and stuff. I guess, Matt, hold up. Let's move to Yentl. Mine is not very good. Let's see the Yentl cover. I love this. This is Mandy Patinkin whispering in Barbra's ear, "Hey, let me sing a song." This is
have you read Matt's book?
That's funny. This is the back cover. This is pretty too.
Yeah. And then open it up too. Just beautiful.
I was really excited to see, sorry, I'm backwards, this piece of art by Richard Amsel. I've never seen before. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think they're both by Richard Amsel. The other one,
this one down here is by him too.
Again, Richard J. found those and turned us on to them, and they were very helpful. And I think that I think there's a researcher's name in both of these.
Yes. I was talking to my sister last night. I have to just tell you the story. I got a little teary-eyed because when I first started enjoying Barbra and her career, it was in 1983 when Yentl came out.
Oh.
And that movie moved me so much, and I had the soundtrack album and I played it and played it and played it. I was just such a fan. And here we are 40 years later, and my name is in the credits on the 40th anniversary of the Yentl album. I mean, it blows my mind and touches me a bit. So thank you for including me.
You're welcome, and you deserve it. You know, I have a bookshelf which you can't see here, and I have somewhere, I think about 50 books written about Barbra. And I can't say that I've read them all cover to cover, but, you know, I have them there in case I need to research some factoid that I don't know. But, you know, your website and particularly your book make it so efficient that to research the kind of things that I need to know, that I just felt you deserved the credit.
Thank you.
He does. Matt has done so much for Barbra fans. I mean, that's how we got connected, was through his website. So I got to jump right in. The Several Sins a Day is the most exciting thing that's happened to me in 2020.
Oh my God.
I am obsessed with this song. I can't stop listening to it. I like the demo. I like the orchestrated version. I can't pick
the orchestrated version.
Tell us everything. How'd you find this song? What do we know about this? How did they do it? I mean, it is incredible. Let's start there.
Well, back in the day, when I first started working with Barbra, the very first project I worked together with her on was called Just for the Record. And it was at that time an up-to-date career retrospective. I don't have that record in front of me, but I think we chose 2 or 3 of those audition songs for Just for the Record.
Yeah, it was The Moon and I, Piece of Sky, and Where Is It Written, I think, are the 3.
Yeah.
I think.
So I didn't I didn't know as much about record making back then as I hopefully know now, but it always seemed to me, and I'm not a trained musician. I can play the guitar and ukulele and a little bit of piano, but I'm not a trained musician. I don't have what I would call, perfect pitch or anything like that. But it always seemed to me that the 2 or 3 Yentl songs from this audition tape that were on that compilation, just for the record, they always sounded too fast. Like somebody had sped up the tape, or maybe the cassette player was running too fast, or I didn't know. I didn't even know it was a question that I could ask. It just struck me that way. So I was sitting with our engineer, Joachim van der Sag, and I mentioned this to him. And he said, well, he said, the reason you're feeling that way is it is too fast. He said, I don't know if it was a mastering error or perhaps the cassette player that they were playing, which were, cassettes were wildly inaccurate. And they weren't recording these things with the intention of putting them on albums. So, he went to the piano and he hit middle C, and he said, you see, it's playing too fast. It's not landing in the right note. So he imperceptibly, I don't even know if anybody would know this if I wasn't sharing this, but he pitch corrected the tracks to the accurate concert tuning. And suddenly when I hear it, I go, oh, that feels right. And it feels settled. It feels that it doesn't feel like it's trying to leap out of the gate. So I was very happy to kind of settle this itch that I had in my mind for all these years, and then we listened to all of the audition demos, and Joachim, like he had done with the Bonsoir record, was able to kind of mute, if that's the right word, extraneous room noise, and so that you really hear, the most pristine performance, as though you were sitting on the sofa while Michel Legrand and Barbra were performing. And I just think it has an immediacy that, as much as I love Legrand's magnificent orchestrations for all the songs on the original soundtrack, there's just something about these demos that just has an immediacy to it that I just love. And
they sound great.
I thought that Barbra's fans would enjoy hearing the genesis of these songs that populated the movie.
I was really surprised. The Tomorrow Night demo, I've never heard before. I have bootlegs of these. The fans have traded these for years, but the bootleg of Tomorrow Night is not this one that's on this album. And this album, and the Tomorrow Night has a different, I guess the middle section, a different melody altogether. It's lovely. I've never heard it. I'm so surprised.
Well, when Barbra has an archivist named Kim Skalecki, and Kim has the keys to the vault. Literally has the keys to the vault. And right. So we went to the vault, and there is like a wall. It's hard to describe, but it's like a wall of master tapes for Yentl. Does every single take, every single outtake, every false take, everything. And so I actually listened to everything so that I could select what I thought was most representative of the rare stuff. Like, so for instance, Several Sins a Day, there's a version where in between verses, there are whole instrumental passages that separate the verses. And
probably meant for some sort of film montage of that she was gonna.
Precisely.
Right.
It was meant for whatever scene that they were planning. But then on another tape, I found Barbara's notes, handwritten note, on the box saying, edit interludes or something like that. And so I didn't create these edits. She and her producers at the time, Phil Ramone and well, I guess that one was produced by Barbra and the Bergmans. But anyway, I didn't do the edits. She did the edits, so it felt okay to do that, to include that, I should say. And then we found I was really intrigued to find the "Papa, Can You Hear Me" pop version. That was kind of a cool discovery, and I think it's quite effective. I can understand why she didn't want to include it on the original album, but I think it's a wonderful thing to have now. And
I was really surprised on "Papa, Can You Hear Me" pop version. It's quite an emotional performance that she gives, considering that they wanted to release it possibly as a single. It's very you can hear the acting. It's so lovely.
Art is never finished. It's only abandoned.
Right.
And so I have a lot of ideas that along the way require necessary compromise because of how much music you can put on vinyl, or what the budget of the idea would be, or what the licensing costs would be, or et cetera, et cetera. But my original plan was to have a 3-disc set, and it would have been the original LP, the demos, and the original score, the full. And that proved to be too unwieldy. So I was able to include the finale of the movie, which is essentially a medley of all the songs in the movie. So I thought that was a nice little add-on that had never been on a CD or LP before.
Yeah, the end title music. I mean, if you had to choose just one, that would be the one. Can we talk about?
Go ahead. I have to just take this call. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Nobody there. Okay.
I was really hoping it was Barbra, and she was going to be like, "What? Let's get that 3rd disc out."
It actually was Barbra, and but then when I said hello, it hung up. So
Ah,
we could, so we can say we had Barbra on the show.
Exactly.
We did it. We did it, Matt.
Very funny. Jay, can we talk about the pop Piece of Sky? Because
remind me.
Yeah, because Grusin and Phil Ramone attempted a pop version, a single version of Piece of Sky. Yeah. I just didn't know if we could talk about it. Can we talk about
certainly talk about it. I did not include it on the record because Barbra's voice is not on it. If I'm honest, is that correct? The one I sent you?
Yeah, it's just instrumental.
Yeah, maybe it was you who found an interview with Phil where he talks about recording.
I interviewed Phil Ramone and I asked him about it, and he recalled that they did it, but
we looked high and low and we could not find any version with Barbra's vocal on it. And the only thing that we found was this kind of very loose jam session, which was kind of interesting, but I would be hard pressed to tell you what song they were playing. So they might have been fishing around the chords of.
Yeah, but I tried to sing along with it, and I couldn't find the melody and whatever they were playing. Yeah.
So I just did not include it because it just didn't seem crucial to the Yentl experience.
Well, and she never recorded a vocal, so it just would have been it just would have been nothing. But I just wanted to bring it up because I listed it on my site for so many years, and a couple of fans said, "Hey, where's the piece of sky?" And I've just said, yeah, urban myth or half true.
I think it's a half true urban myth, because we have a pretty Kim keeps a pretty clean shop over there in the archive world, and we think we know just about everything. Every track that Barbara's recorded, and we could not find this.
I don't know if you guys have read Phil Ramone's biography, but he talks a lot about Yentl and how it was the first time he worked in digital, and they did it in analog, then they redid it in digital, then she did her voice. And so I was curious, when you were going through this, is that why there's so many versions because of that? Because they did it digitally and analog?
I don't know the answer to that. I knew Phil quite well. We were good friends. And one of the hallmarks of his career, he started off in the business as a recording engineer. And so he was always very forward thinking in terms of technology. And we have Phil to thank for the success of Concert in Central Park, for example, because he created this delay system with speaker towers that today is very common at festivals, but it had not been thought of until Phil figured it out, which is, how can you sit, if you're at the back of the park, furthest from the stage, you want to hear the music at the same time as the people at the front of the stage are hearing it. But there was always a delay until Phil figured out a way to, wire it up differently. So he was always very cutting edge with digital and he was he created a system. I don't know if he created it, but he certainly was the early adapter of a system called the EDNet system, where, a person could be in Taiwan and sing into the microphone, into the studio in Los Angeles without delay. So it was like being in the room next to the person. And that was used on, we used that on a couple of Barbra duets when both artists couldn't be in the same room. That was all Phil. So I kind of remember hearing something about recording the album digitally, but then not loving the lack of warmth that Barbra wanted. So then transferring the digital back to analog or something like that. I don't know the whole story, but it was all in an effort to make the music as warm and round sounding. And in those days, the criticism of digital was that it had a kind of a brittle quality as compared to tape. Now, I think they've found ways to adjust it so that it doesn't have that brittle quality. But back then, it was decidedly had a kind of a rigidity that analog tape was more forgiving in that sense.
Nice.
Well, whenever I have Jay, I like to pitch something I want. And I love that we're going back. And next project, the Broadway album. I want a deluxe, the Broadway album and demos. We can throw Back to Broadway in there. Let's put that. Yentl, good start. Love it. We need more.
These are all, obviously the final say here is Barbra's, as always, but that Uber Broadway, for lack of a better title, is something that I've also wanted to put together. Matt, you have a fairly comprehensive knowledge of songs that she recorded for various iterations of Back to Broadway, and outtakes from the albums and all of that. And I've long wanted to go into the vaults and listen to every take of the finished records to see if there are some, different arrangements and different things. So I really want to do a deep dive into the Broadway album.
Jazzy, Can't Help Loving That Man,
Yeah.
Show Me, the original Unusual Way. Oh my God, there's so much.
Make Our Garden Grow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, Matt,
you're speaking our language.
Yeah, Matt, are you doing anything this weekend? Because I'm free. I feel like you want to go. I mean, I feel like we'll help you, Jay. What do you need? Matt and I are in.
Well, I like the fact that the Beatles just put out a new Vault record.
What do you think of it?
I love it.
Me too.
Isn't it fun? It's not too AI either. You know what I'm saying? It sounds organic.
Yes, that was a misnomer. The very technology that they used on this new Beatles record, Now and Then, is the same technology that we used on Bonsoir.
Oh, interesting.
We were just able to,
I know you're a big Beatles fan, Jay.
I am a Beatle maniac.
Did you know about this song before? I did.
I did.
Had you heard it? I never heard it. I love it. I thought it was great.
And it's pretty remarkable when you listen to John Lennon's home recording on a really bad cassette player that has a pervasive buzz going through it. That they were able to, the technology has allowed them to essentially mute those frequencies so that we don't hear that buzz anymore. And then, of course, Taylor Swift, re-recorded a lot of her songs. And my daughter in the car today, she was playing me a dozen songs that had been left off of the original 1989 record. And she was explaining, well, this one's written about Harry Styles, and this one's written about, she knows the whole backstory of all these things.
She's a Swiftie.
Yeah. So,
and when Taylor, she made a video to All Too Well, the 10-minute version. And do you know what movie she screened before directing that video? The Way We Were.
Nice.
She said that she modeled it after The Way We Were and Barbra's performance and the colors. So Swiftie is a Barbra fan as well.
Nice.
And I don't know if people realize that, but
Barbra's a Swiftie fan, so that's a Swift fan.
So tell Barbra that The Way We Were is the genesis for the All Too Well music video.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I will tell her. Anyway, I was very happy that, and it was kind of an odd, this past year was kind of, it's quite out of the ordinary to release two Barbra Streisand albums on the same day.
Right.
And again, going back to Best Laid Plans, it was the 50th anniversary of The Way We Were, 40th anniversary of Yentl, and 60th anniversary of her 6 decades on Columbia Records. So in my mind, I was going, oh, that's great. You got 40, 50, and 60. But I had expected that they would come out staggered. But because of a confluence of events, starting with COVID, which changed the supply side of shipping vinyl. It used to be in years past, and one other thing, that Columbia Records used to have a massive factory that manufactured vinyl. But when the CD generation came along, they shut down that factory and turned it into a CD factory. They turned down the LP factory and turned it into a CD factory. And so it used to be that if you had an album coming out in, November, you could deliver it in August. And they'd press it up and it would be out. Now you have to deliver it 6 months in advance. So it creates a real delivery problem. So the compromise, if you will, was the justification that we made is, we'll make it the month of Barbra, the book, the DVD for The Way We Were with the extra scenes, her 60th anniversary, and the 40th anniversary of Yentl. Because I don't like putting out things on, like the 41st anniversary of Yentl. It has to be even.
Right.
So anyway, that's how it happened.
Well, it certainly is the month of Barbra. It's very exciting to be a Barbra fan in November 2023.
Barbra
And next
Palooza.
week, next week is going to be, well, I guess starting Sunday is the CBS Sunday morning interview. And then, oh my God, there's so much coming. It's so exciting.
Yeah. She's going to be on Howard Stern.
Yeah. I
On,
can't wait to hear that.
Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
She's kind of publicity of adverse. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Averse? Is it with a D or an
Adverse? Adverse, I think. Yeah.
But she spent the better part of 10 years writing this book, and I mean really writing it. There's no ghostwriter, and so she said, I guess I have to let people know it's out.
Well, she is welcome here. We would love to have her as a guest. Please invite her.
Sure.
Matt and I are very friendly, we're pro Barbra.
You are. You're definitely in her corner. And
but we always love to have you so much and all that you do for fans.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for telling us the stories about these albums. You always have great information to share with us and the fans.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the fans, of course, who continue to show their affection for her music, which is great. And thank you guys. And I'll see you on the next album.
Yeah.
All right.
Broadway.
Which we're starting in January.
Oh, well, let's wind this up with a spoiler alert.
That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, that's great news. That's great to hear. I think the main question, besides when is the memoir coming out, is when is Barbra recording again? So that's great to hear.
You just heard it. All right.
Yay.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Take care. Bye.
That was incredible. Barbra's going to record. I mean, should I write a song and get it to her? I think she'd probably want to do one of my songs.
Thank you, Jay, for dropping those amazing words of hope.
I know, and you know me, I am hoping for Streisand Sing Sondheim. She said that was going to be next, so let's hope that's what it is.
She's also said that she wants to record a oh God, now I forgot his name. He wrote Lady Liberty.
Oh yeah.
She wants to record one of his songs.
Desiree or something. It's like almost
like Desmond Child.
Yeah.
Desmond Child.
Interesting.
Yeah. So who knows? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's just been. I mean, these albums came out October 27th, and then a week later, we're getting the book. We're getting all these interviews. We get to see Barbra again. We haven't seen her for a while, so it's just really a lot of fun right now.
It really is, and I'm going to do the audiobook over the book because I want to hear her voice. I just think it'll be more fun. I'm not really an audiobook guy, but this one, I think you got to do it.
I've never listened to an audiobook before. Is that bad?
No, I haven't.
I usually just read books, but this will be fun. I think it'll be a hoot.
Well, I think especially once he said there's 60 songs in it, that sold me. Like when he said that, I was like, oh, I want that then.
The publisher states that, but I didn't really know what it meant, and now he's clarified. And in a few days, we'll all know.
well, I don't know. It'll be a few days after the few days because it's going to take us a few days to listen to 48 hours.
Oh yeah.
So we want to go one more time to tell you to go out to Tucker DS Press and order Barbra Streisand the music. We did a second printing, and we have those. When those are gone, this book is gone. You want it, it's in full color. Look at that. I went right to Prince of Tides, which has my all-time favorite for all we know. And then they're gone. So get them for Christmas. Amazon has it way deep discounted. We package it with love, bubble wrap. They come perfectly. What was it like? What is it? Have you had any feedback on the book? I mean, it's been out 6 months now. What's been your feedback on your first book release?
Um, I haven't had a lot of feedback. It seemed like April, when it came out, was when everybody was reaching out and talking about it. So it's been kind of quiet, I have to say.
Okay.
Sometimes I sneak in onto Amazon and read some reviews just to make sure that I don't know, we didn't offend somebody or something. But I think generally the the reviews are good too, which pleases me, you know.
Well,
And the
yeah,
book is what it is.
I mean,
You
it's
know, it's
got
my
101 ratings and it's a 4.8. That's actually higher than my Moonlighting. I think my
oh
Moonlighting book has a 4.6.
oh
So you're doing better than me, so I don't like that. But like I said, it's the #1 suggested book when you go to Barbra, and it does say like frequently bought together. My name is Barbra and Barbra Streisand the music. So these
I
go
didn't realize that.
together like Jim Brolin and Barbra Streisand.
Yay.
So support us and we'll keep doing these shows. And I love Jay's stories. Like, I can't believe I get to hear these firsthand. It's incredible. And I don't think he gave enough love to Several Sins a Day. So let's give it just a little bit more love. If people are out there thinking, I don't want a Yentl, I've heard it, I don't need these demos, they're wrong, aren't they?
I I write in the book, in my book, that I'm not a musician and stuff like that. So I often have to find musical words that I don't know exist. And I think the word that describes the orchestrated version of Several Sins a Day is Baroque. It's
Yes.
Baroque. And I love that.
Oh, it's incredible. And I think, I did ask Jade for Barbra to come on the show. I know it's not going to happen. And damn, she called and we could have had, we
He
could have
was
said,
pulling our leg.
no, because that was a different phone. That was the Barbra Bat line. If you notice earlier, although I probably edited it out, he answered this phone. Then this phone, it was another phone. It was the Barbra Bat phone. But
That's funny.
but I would like to ask Barbra, like, why she cut the one truly comic song. No Wonder's a little comic, but I thought it was interesting because there's a lot of comedy in Several Sins a Day. It was like an old-fashioned 60s Barbra song.
Maybe she'll write about it in her book. Who knows? But I would suggest that maybe it's a huge number. I mean, she's not lip syncing walking down the street for this number. I think it's all these scenes that they would have had to have filmed, just a whole bunch of scenes to, fill in this 3-minute song. So it was probably a big production that,
Right.
I'm always a fan of The Moon and I too. I wish, I would love to hear an orchestrated version of that if it existed. I mean, obviously, I think it doesn't. But
Well, and I didn't want to put you on the spot in front of Jay, but I'm going to do it to you now. Is there
okay,
a difference between this Moon and I and Just for the Records Moon and I? Because
yeah,
I thought there was. I
but
kind of put them back and forth.
it's not a different take or anything. It's just on Just for the Record, they leave out the verse, the introductory verse. Although it seems da 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 da. That's not on Just for the Record, but it is on this. And I was always sad because I had the bootlegs of these. And when Just for the Record came out, I was like, oh, they cut the intro. Oh. But now we have it.
Okay, so it was the same take because I couldn't really tell. I was sort of like going back and forth, and I thought, I'll just ask Matt. All right, Matt. Well, this was so much fun. As always,
Yeah.
we love covering Barbra. We're always out trying to get guests with, I guess we're no Howard Stern, but maybe we'll have Barbra come on and talk about her book. I got the shirt. That's step 1.
Yay.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Okay, Scott. Bye, everybody.